Andrea Immer Robinson, and I'm a master sommelier. Exploring wine and food is my passion, and it's my life's work. As a wine and food book author, TV host, trained chef, and educator, it's my privilege to share with you the fun, people, and places, and the delicious pairings that make our lives and our planet a better place. Welcome to Quench from my home in wine country. Well, hey everybody, welcome to Napa Valley. You know I live there, and it's great to have you back. This is now the 7th episode of Quench, which was launched in October in camaraderie with Come Over October, the brainchild of Karen McNeil. And why we're back on Sunday is because she has launched a campaign, Share and Pair Sundays. And it's something I think that's been around in the wine culture for a while, but it's time that we all really dive back in and enjoy it. And I thought it would be a great time to launch the first of those this weekend, because we're wrapping up Women's History Month. And if there's any greater wine woman in the world than Karen McNeil, I don't know who it would be. There are some that are probably on her level. I love Jancis Robinson and her hard work, but nobody better. And so I'm really excited to raise a toast to Share and Pair Sundays to all of you. If you're joining in, please let me know. If you are hearing, it looks like I see on my end that my audio looks good, but I'd love to hear from you and know if you are able to hear me and see everything. We are going to focus on Share and Pair Sundays and the idea of pairing with spring flavors. I'm going to tell you all about what inspired that in just a second. But we're also enjoying a really, really great weekend of March Madness. We are heavy into the women's semifinals that will get us down to the Final Four. Today, we had a couple of great matchups. Monday, of course, we'll have the remainder. But today, wow, it was such a nail biter, but an exciting one between UCLA and LSU. Man, I got to tell you, it is so exciting to watch March Madness, and it's so exciting to see the sport of women's basketball start to get so much attention. We'll talk about more of that in a second, but one thing that's interesting about this year and why I think this will continue, or one of the reasons it will help it, is that this is the first year, and I've been following some great women's sports reporters. Nicole Auerbach is one of them, and she talks about the fact that, and I didn't know this is the first year that women's NCAA basketball will receive units, which means funding back from, or a slice of the pie of the revenue that the NCAA gets for its television broadcast rights for all these tournaments. Well, they should, because these women's games get incredible excitement and coverage about them, and they should. What you see when you watch this, and why it's so exciting to really be able to commemorate it during Women's History Month, is that the mental toughness, the commitment, the teamwork. And I got to tell you, my son has been playing basketball for years, probably since he was 5 years old. It is a brain sport. If you play it well, you've got court sense, ball sense, you know where your teammates are, you've got strategy, you have to think, you have to plan, and then you have to change on a dime when the plan doesn't go well or the opponent does something different. So it's exciting to be able to say that we've got a couple of great teams going to the Final Four so far. UCLA and South Carolina, they're, of course, they're frequent defenders of the title, or at least very often at the big dance. Tomorrow, we will have the other semifinal round between UConn and TCU. And the Connecticut Huskies, I'm a huge fan of those folks, and it's just been really fun to watch Paige Beckers. She's quite the player. But TCU, the Horned Frogs, they were a hop, skip, and a jump from Southern Methodist University, where I went. Big rivalries in football at the time. You've got Haley Van Lith and a whole team of just incredible athletes really cranking away at this. So very, very excited about that. Share and Pair Sundays, though, let's get back to it, because this is a really great time for us to remember that getting together, especially over wine, conversation, and food. That's where the pairing part comes in. I'm going to do some cool spring pairings here, because wine is meant for food. There are lots of other alcoholic beverages that we enjoy, but wine has something that food needs and that really very few other alcohol beverages have, and that's acid. Acid is a condiment for all the other flavors in the world. And also, of course, all the stuff we love to eat, and that includes sweet stuff. But today we're all about savory and we're all about spring flavors. And I told you on social media that we would be focused on asparagus because it's the notorious enemy of wine. So we'll do that in a second. I actually have some asparagus roasting in the oven right now because that's sort of number one is for me is how you cook it. But I want to take a second and talk about the poll because we talked about what goes with asparagus. And I gave you a bracket, and I gave you Sonoma County Sauvignon Blanc, Vermentino from Tuscany, but there are other great Vermentinos, but that's a place where it's a signature. And then I gave you Gruner Veltliner from Austria and Muscat from Alsace, the dry style, not the sweet Moscato style that we're used to a lot over here. It is a classic match there. Well, that one got almost no votes. Sauvignon Blanc from Sonoma County was the head and shoulders best one. So we're going to focus on that tonight, but we will talk about why the other ones work and why you might want to try them. I had the chance last Monday, speaking of Sonoma County Sauvignon Blanc, to go over to La Crema Winery just right across the mountain range from where I live because they've really become specialists in Sauvignon Blanc. They've always been known for Chardonnay and for Pinot Noir. Their Sauvignon Blanc program has exploded and is truly one of my favorite varieties in the lineup. So over-delivers for the price. You guys may know that's Jackson Family Wines. And we're going to taste actually a trio of their Sonoma County Sauvignon Blancs, Matanzas Creek, which I've had on every wine list I've ever written, the La Crema, which is new to the party, and a splurge, but so worth it, the Stone Street. And we'll talk about why those things work in a second. But first, I want to just take you to La Crema and to meet Haley, Jackson, Hartford, Murray, and Ben Fine, who took me through this tasting and gave me the pointers that I'm going to share with you tonight. So here we go. We'll talk about all of those topics. I already mentioned that. And let's get to our movie right here. There we go. It's so great to be here at La Crema Winery. I've actually never been here.
Really? Oh, wonderful.
And
yeah, glad you can come.
and I'm so excited to be here with both of you. We've got Haley, Jackson, Hartford, Murray.
Yes.
Co-proprietor of Jackson Family Wines, and also you're the GM of Hartford Family Winery.
Yeah, president of Hartford Winery.
President, okay.
Yeah.
And then Ben Fine,
Yeah.
He's the lead educator for the Jackson Family Wines. So maybe as a starting point, we should pick up a glass and just toast to share and pair Sundays.
Yes, for sure.
Haley, I want to ask you, we're wrapping up Women's History Month, and there's a lot that Jackson Family represents in terms of celebrating women at the top of their game, which I think is great. So can you just give a little bit of the lowdown there?
We're very proud of that fact. You know, we have over 60% of our winemakers are women, and the industry average, I think, is much closer to 15. So very proud to be able to. I know, I was shocked actually because we have so many women that are just incredible talents, and excited that they can work with us to make delicious wines, like many of the wines that we have on our table today.
Look at this amazing crudité platter.
Yeah, so this is from our estate garden, maybe 5 minutes down the road from here. It's run by our culinary gardener, Tucker Taylor, who is really one-in-one when it comes to that role. And so 5 acres, 3 greenhouses, and he is giving creative freedom. He's growing things that are found all over the world that really no one else has figured out how to grow here. And then of course, working out of a winery, and we have an incredible kitchen with all these chefs, you really get to say, okay, what's tasting good right now, or what's fresh out in the garden, and let's figure out some pairings. So some that classic, and then also outside of the box. And you know, it's always fun to experiment one way or the other, and it's a good time.
Well, the asparagus is out of the oven. Did you guys notice that garden? That was insane. And I have been there in person. It's right near at the Kendall Jackson Wine Center, which is a beautiful, incredible place to visit. I highly, highly recommend it, going there and doing some of the garden pairings. But that is an amazing place. I'm going to show you some of the produce that we paired with in a second. But the asparagus is out of the oven. So this is just fresh asparagus. The ends are snipped off. Of course, you wash it. And then olive oil, salt, pepper. And then I take a little microplane and I grate a little bit of lemon peel over it before roasting. I'm going to add a little bit more now. So I have some that's actually sort of roasted on there, and then I have some that is going on there fresh. So you're going to get that kind of combination of the lemon oil that's been melted into the asparagus from the roasting, but then you're also going to get that fresh, snappy taste of the pithy brightness. And asparagus has a component in it that is known to make a lot of wines taste oddly sweet or oddly metallic. So the challenge then is to make sure that you're going to pair it with something that can kind of bite back. And that's where the wines that we put in our bracket come in. Muscat from Alsace has a little bit of what's called phenolic bitterness. It's the same thing that you find in a lot of vegetables, not the same chemical, but the same effect on your palate. It gives you a little bit of a cut or a bite at the end. I swear, this is your homework assignment. I want you to go buy some dry Muscat from Alsace. Trimbach is a go-to of mine. It is available. It's affordable. Give it a shot. But what we have here is some Sonoma County Sauvignon Blanc. I also suggested that you try Vermentino from Italy. Vermentino is a white grape, and it's a specialty of Tuscany. Not a lot of it planted, but as white wines are getting more popular, it's emerging in popularity for sure. It too has a little bit of a phenolic bite and almost a little bit of a bitter almond character to it that really is a nice match with the bitter bite and that sort of almost nuttiness that you get from asparagus. Adding that lemon brings in something that matches to the acidity of these dry white wines, so that gives it a nice little kick that goes along really well. And then the other thing, of course, that we're focused on here today is Sonoma County Sauvignon Blanc, and we had 3. And I want to take you through what Ben and Haley talked about in terms of the style differences, because the Matanzas Creek, I asked Ben to, kind of put it in a nutshell, and he said, think about it as kind of snappy and almost a little bit saline or salinity. And I thought, perfect. You've got acid and salt. Isn't that what we use as a condiment for our food? So to me, that's the number one go-to for the asparagus, but I'm going to give it a try and just see. Ooh, that's delicious if I do say so myself. I'm going to remove my basketball because eventually I will need the spittoon. Oh my goodness. Absolutely perfect. 0 sense of sweetness in the wine, 0 sense of metallic taste. And actually, the wine really kicks out the roasted, almost smoky taste of the asparagus. I had it in a 425-degree convect bake. If you don't have a convection setting on your oven, put it at 450 and just leave it in there for about 10, 12 minutes. Just watch. These are nice and thin, pencil thin for the spring style. But in places like Spain and Alsace, they're often very thick. Just takes a little longer. You may want to peel the ends if they're a little bit thicker. These are so tender and fresh, they're perfect. Then we talked about the style of the La Crema, and the La Crema is richer. It has more of a tropical, but not overripe tropical character to it. There's still that beautiful Sauvignon Blanc citric acidity, kaffir lime, and yogurty quality to it. But the tropical is kind of like your green pineapples and your green mango. And when Haley was talking about this, because this is a winery that she's very closely tied to, she talked about texture, and I completely agree. So for this, because we're bumping up the texture, richer, rounder in the mouth, still has that nice bite. I'm actually going to do a little trick here, and I'm going to add something to match up to the heavier, denser texture. This is a little bit of Manchego cheese. I call this magic fairy dust for food because I love it. And I've been writing about it. I've had it in I think every book I've ever written. Great Wine Made Simple, Great Taste Made Simple, and Everyday Dining. I wax poetic about Manchego cheese. Why? Because it's dry, has a lot of umami, very beautiful grating cheese, beautiful crystalline, kind of buttery sense, a little bit of nuttiness from the age. There are different ages, just like Parmigiano Reggiano. Big difference that makes me prefer it to Parmigiano Reggiano, less salty. So it doesn't overpower. I love, love, love that. But it adds the richness that we're looking for to go with the heavier wine. And this time, wow. This time, actually, the wine pumps up the dish. I taste the that beautiful garden earthy freshness of the asparagus, but I also taste the richness of the cheese. And that brings me to the third one in the lineup. This is definitely one worth looking for and worth paying up for. It's a $70, that's their price at the winery, so maybe you can find it a little less somewhere sometime or sign up for the wine club discount. But it's a little bit more expensive because smaller yields, a tiny, very, very bespoke estate on the mountainside in the foothills or in the upper uplands of the Alexander Valley appellation. They're working on their own AVA there, I believe. But this is really, really special. It sees a little bit of oak. Now, not new, not toasty, intense oak, but just a little bit that gives it, yes, a nuttiness, but not vanilla, not baking spice. It's almost more like macadamia or cashew butter. So just gives that little bit of extra richness. And for this, I have its own dish. So we're going to talk about, we talked about gardens, that Kendall Jackson garden. Okay, the first thing that I tasted there was this thing. I wish I could focus in on it for you. It's called ice plant. And if you look at it very closely, it actually looks like it has been frozen in a layer of ice, like when you see a tree and it's been covered with icicles or something like that. Well, Tucker Taylor, the gardener, brought these plants, or brought this seed stock from South Africa, I believe, or Africa. I believe this is the only place that this plant grows. When you eat it raw, first of all, it's crunchy, but then it's also tart and salty. So we tasted it with the Matanzas Creek. This is crazy. Now, I know when you get together for March Madness next weekend to watch the Final Four, you probably won't have ice plant. But if you want to get together for a share and pair Sunday or Friday or Saturday, I would suggest doing a tasting like this. Get your friends together, maybe split it between 10 people or something like that, so you don't have too much wine, and you certainly split the cost. And you can compare the styles yourself. But just fresh crudité, and look at these. I got these from them on Monday, and they're still beautiful, beautiful little radishes, and we're going to do something with them. So, Now, when we're talking about fresh vegetable flavors, that's where Sauvignon Blanc really, really shines. A lot of other places too. Haley talked about loving it with a fresh oyster. And if you think about it, it makes total sense. What do we serve oysters with? Squeeze a lemon, mignonette sauce, acid. Well, just give me the oyster, give me the wine, and I don't need any of the condiments, right? So what I'm going to do, though, is I'm going to make a dish that I have specifically thought would pair really, really well with the richer styles of Sauvignon Blanc. So it's called edamame pesto. And if you're wondering about the recipe, it's in my social media. You'll see a link in my bio, and you can also, you can sign up there to just get a free download of all the recipes and a cheese pairing guide for Sauvignon Blanc, because you guys know that I love cheese. So what I just put in there was a ginormous amount of basil and a ginormous amount of cilantro. So already you're saying that's not your typical pesto, and that's right. This is what I'm calling edamame pesto. So instead of using pine nuts, I am using edamame, which gives me a complete protein, as you know. And then I'm going to add, the recipe calls for lime juice, but I have lemon tree outside, so I'm going to use lemon juice. And we throw the herbs in there and the edamame. And then this is the genius part, really, for any wine that has some oak to it, and that is sesame oil, about 3 tablespoons. That's just for flavor. We're going to use olive oil for the bulk of the body in this. So you're going to notice no cheese, no nuts. So if you want a pesto option that doesn't have either of those allergens, potential allergens for people, and that is vegan, boom, you got it. All right, where's my lid here? So we're going to just whirl that up. And then I put salt in there, and the next thing we're going to do is grab our olive oil and just start to make it pesto. But let me grab my little scraper first. Here we go. about a third of a cup, just streaming it in there, and you're gonna get that nice, creamy, spreadable flavor and texture, creamy flavor, spreadable texture, something like that. And we'll just scrape it down a little bit to make sure that we get a nice, good emulsion with the rest of the herbs. It smells so good. I'm like, I just got hit by a wave of that toasted sesame oil smell. And I do suggest look for toasted and look for pure. Sometimes sesame oils will be blended with others. It's not a problem with that, but they don't have the same flavor intensity. And so if you want really to be a purist about it, I didn't change anything. So anyway, welcome back. So sorry about that. We are in the middle of making edamame pesto, and hopefully you can hear everything and see everything well. But anyway, so we've got some shelled edamame. I just bought it frozen. We've got cilantro and basil, a little bit of toasted sesame oil, salt, and some lemon juice, and then olive oil to make it thick like a pesto. So what I'm gonna do is actually just have it on some nice toasted country bread, and I'm gonna make just one little bit of it here to demo. So I'm gonna just do it in the toaster for simplicity. But normally what I would do if I'm making it for a crowd, spray both sides with my olive oil sprayer. You know I love it very much and use it all the time. And then just put them in the oven at about 375 for about 10 minutes. They'll get nice and toasty on a baking sheet. You don't need to do anything else particularly special. And in the meantime, let's talk about a little bit more about veggies, because I have these beautiful, beautiful radishes. And one of the things that is interesting about radishes is that they have this little bite. It's a snappy, saline bite to them. And so I immediately thought of that as we're sitting there going through this beautiful produce at the Kendall Jackson Garden. So I'm actually just gonna shave really, really thin shavings of the radish and use that as a topping for this crostini. That's essentially what I'm going to do with the edamame pesto. So, you know, a few different colors here. They're beautiful. These are little fresh, beautiful garden radishes. I'm gonna tell you what to do with the ones that get a little bit bigger, that maybe start to get a little bit aggressive in taste profile, especially for wine. I learned this from a chef. There's an amazing trick that makes a whole new, for me at least, was a revelation, a whole new approach on radishes. She said, "What are you talking about? This is what they do all the time in Europe." And I thought, well, I've never seen it, but I'll show you in a second. But for now, we have just some nice little bits of shaved radish. And then we'll just put that on the toasted crostini covered with the pesto. And what are we getting here when we talk about this? So we're getting a couple of things. We're getting, first of all, some fantastic richness from the oil, right? Some richness and flavor from the sesame oil and texture, richness of texture from both the sesame and the olive oils. I'm gonna cut that off because I'm gonna show you another approach here in a second. And then we're getting that really beautiful herbaceous character that everybody loves with wonderful, wonderful vegetables from the summer and spring garden. And right now it is things like the asparagus, it's things like radishes, it's peas, it's mint, it's all these green herbs that are so perfect for Sauvignon Blanc. So a beautiful edamame pesto, a little bit of the shaved radish on top. First of all, wow, it's practically health food, and the radish brings both a sweetness, but also an earth and a bite. And what I want, and then here comes the sesame, so that's a hard one. I think the Matanzas Creek with a snappy salinity, that gives you the beautiful cut through, but then I'm actually going over to the Stone Street for its richness to pick up the richness of the sesame. Oh, so good. So good. All right, now let's talk about radishes and ways to make them really, really delicious for when they're a little bit bigger, or you just want something a little bit more subtle because they can be a little bit intense. Now those are pretty much about as subtle as you get because they are fresh from that amazing garden. But I have these bigger ones here that I got just at the regular market, and this is the cool trick. So we're going to slice them as if we were, cooking, I don't know what, potatoes or something like that. And I want you to think about when you're cutting them down that you want to give yourself a nice flat surface to cut with. And I'm going to just, you can do it any way you want. I'm just going to do a thin slice like this. And they're pretty. And they are usually pretty inexpensive. And I think these days that's important to a lot of us because everything's expensive. And not going to get any cheaper anytime soon with tariffs, right? Everyone says, oh, great, tariffs on wine imports, which haven't been declared yet but are being threatened, will be great for U.S. wineries. But that's not really true because most of the U.S. wineries count on the distributor tier, which is legally required. That's the way they get the wines from the winery into a store or a restaurant, have to go through a distributor. This has been the case since the repeal of Prohibition in 1934. And so if the distributors have to pay 200% tariffs on wine, which is what's being talked about, for coming from other countries, coming from Europe, for example, they will have to raise prices, and they will have to raise them to a level that customers will be really shying away from, understandably. That will hurt their sales. Most of them, may not even have the cash to pay to get the wines out of customs, because if you have 200% tariffs and you already paid for the wine that shows up at the port, then you're suddenly going to have to come up with twice what you already paid to get it out of the port and get it sold. And that's not okay because that ends up getting in the way of being able to make payroll, and Lord knows everybody needs their job. So basically that will put a huge strain on and probably put out of business people, some of the people in the distributors and the importers, which is the tier between them that actually have to take care of that tariff situation. But everyone in the end has that financial strain, and I think it will put a damper on hospitality, certainly will put a damper on importer and distributor jobs. And so I just want people to understand that, because I studied economics and I know that tariffs can be useful in certain situations, strategic ones, but mostly they are not economically very valuable. They don't earn money for the government that charges for them unless that product can pass along its price increase to the customer. When does that happen? When nobody can get the product any other way. All right, so now what I'm doing is I'm peeling, or trying to, a shallot. Shallots are part of the allium family, like garlic, like onions, etc. And I think that they are the magic allium for wine. Yes, garlic and onions can be good with certain wines, but generally speaking, and this is something I learned in French cooking school, because shallots, we had mountains of shallots in the kitchen the first day I got there, and I was like, I didn't even know what a shallot was. I grew up with onions, a little bit of garlic. Being in the South, it was mostly onion. And I found out that they are onions with a sweet tooth, not sugary, but there's something about them that's really, really, really subtle. And you will find the classic way to cook a vegetable in France, in classic French cooking, is just to either saute it or blanch it in water that tastes like the Mediterranean, so already salted, and then sweat some shallots in butter and saute them together in a pan. And that's it. Well, I never thought in my wildest dreams growing up of the idea of cooking radishes. And then Michelle Bernstein, a wonderful chef, you've probably heard of her, in Miami, turned me on to this idea. And I was like, this is amazing. So let me grab some butter, because I forgot to do that. And this is some very cool French butter, but you can use whatever butter is affordable at the store. Somebody gave this to me as a gift. Otherwise, I'm usually looking for whatever's on sale. And when it's on sale, you can buy it and freeze it, right? So you can get it when you can buy extra more than you would need and freeze it. So I'm going to grab this skillet here, and we're just going to sweat the shallots briefly in butter. And I put this little burner here so that I can cook in front of you rather than turning my back to you. So little bit of fancy French butter, but again, it doesn't have to be fancy French. And we'll just start by sweating the shallots in there, and then give the radishes a little saute, and away we go. So radishes would be another great vegetable for something like a Gruner Veltliner, which is one of the wines that was in our bracket, and the Vermentino. But I would say especially the Gruner. There are a lot of descriptors for the Gruner Veltliner that people use, especially in blind tasting tests. And radish, daikon radish, believe it or not, is one of them. So it gives that nice little earthy bite to it that there's no other way to describe it but daikon radish. And so we'll put just a little bit of the shallots. I'll save the rest of those for later. And what we call this sweating them, because we're not going to let them brown. We're just going to let them get soft, because that releases the juices and gives it a really nice flavor. So a little bit, I'm going to kick up the temperature just a hair, but I don't want that to brown. And while we're doing that, let's talk for a second more about Vermentino, because I mentioned that to you, and Vermentino is a really interesting grape variety. It is actually, I believe, native to the south of France, where in places like Provence, it's called Rolle, R-O-L-L-E. And if you've ever had, for example, the Brangelina rosé wine, Chateau Miraval, yes, it's mostly the Grenache grape, and it's made with just the briefest amount of skin contact to get that pale color. But they also use a little bit of the white grape, Vermentino, in there to give it roundness and that little bit of mid-palate bite, that little bit of bitterness that I was mentioning before. So I'm going to try that with, I'm actually going to try that with the pesto and just see. And what we always think about when we think about Italian white wines is they're rarely oak aged. There are very few where that is a signature to the style. Almost always really lean, clean, crisp, a little bit savory, and that is so perfect for spring vegetables and spring dishes and flavors in general. It's obviously also great for things like seafood, but when we're talking about sharing and pairing for spring, then, I think I want a little more butter in here. I can just tell right now. And I'm gonna go ahead and season it as well. A little bit of salt. And Michelle would often use white pepper rather than black, mostly because it looks nicer, right? But I love black pepper, and it's also what I have handy. A little bit more butter. And while we let that just sweat down, I'm not going to let these get cooked really, really firm or really, really soft, because I still want them to have that garden bite in the same way that everything coming out of the garden right now, we're not going to cook it the way my grandmother and my great aunt did in the South and the Southeast, where, you'd have green beans from the garden and you might cook them for a really long time on the stove with a ham hock. Now that is magical food, but it does a whole different thing to the green beans, right? And it becomes more about the taste of the smoky pork that's with it. So we'll let that cook a little bit longer. Vermentino from Italy. Ooh, okay. This also has the garden smell. And when I think of that, I'm thinking of almost a roasted artichoke or artichokes barragoule. It's got just a little bit of that vegetative quality, but then also an incredibly crunchy, it's like a crunchy apple or a crunchy quince. There's something really crunchy about the smell. So I'm going to give that a taste. And I think that's going to be perfect. And I think these are ready. So let's give it a go. How many people have ever cooked radishes? Probably you're all watching and saying, oh yeah, we cook them all the time. Well, not me. That was new to me. And but let's give this a try. Let me grab. Toasty. And everybody loves when I do these shows because then, of course, when I'm done, it's dinner time. That is the vegetable of the season right there. So good. Wow, I'm not so sure. I think I'm going to like that better with the matanzas. Let's just give that a try. I'll tell you why. I think that the dish with the butter was just a little bit too rich for the Italian white wine. I think if I was going to cook it again for the Italian white wine, I would use olive oil instead of butter. Yep. Because there's a roundness that comes from the butter. The olive oil, as you know from eating olive oil, it gets more of a vegetative quality and it brings that to whatever you cook in it. That's the play. All right, so everybody at the Kendall Jackson Garden, I just gave you an idea. I'm sure I did not give you an idea. They have so many great chefs there, as you know, as you heard from the discussion, and as you will discover when you visit. Last pairing here, though, I'm going to use these cooked radishes, and what we're going to do is we're going to take the other Magic Fairy dust for wine, in this case specifically, the Magic Fairy dust for Sauvignon Blanc, and that is goat cheese. Goat cheese is one of those pairings that's based off of the idea of if they grew up together, they go together. Why? Well, some of the classic fresh goat cheeses are associated with the Loire Valley in France, and specifically the area where Sauvignon Blanc is most famous, which is Sancerre, and right across the river from it, Pouilly-Fumé, and its sort of cousin appellation, Manitou-Ceylon. Look for all of those. They tend to be more expensive than Sonoma County Sauvignon Blancs these days. So if you are noticing that, well, you're fine with Sonoma County Sauvignon Blanc, so don't worry about it. But goat cheese on your crostini, and then these cooked radishes. Now, what do you have here? So you got the bite and that snappy, saline earthiness of the radish. I'm going to take a little bit off there so it's not too hard to take a bite of. Then you've got the creaminess of the goat cheese, and you've got the sweetness of the shallot coming in there to balance it all out. And I think you've got real magic. I think I'm going to go for the Stone Street with this because richness, but also earth, and yeah, because I love it also. Okay. I'm sharing and pairing with you, but that will be a go-to for every gathering that I have going forward. Okay, not everyone, because if you come over twice, you'll be bored with the same thing. That's delicious. Wow. Ooh, ooh, that's a win. It's actually overpowering the wine a little bit. And this is really how this stuff gets figured out. Experimentation. I'm thinking that the tropical fruit of this and the texture that we talked about, I think that's going to step up here. Yeah. Oh my. Okay. That might be the March Madness winner of pairings for Share and Pair Sundays, based on beautiful spring flavors. In this case, Sauvignon Blanc, but I think all of these things would go beautifully with Gruner Veltliner. Remember, you're going to try the Muscat as well with your asparagus. And also, just remember, it's easy to do. Just roast it. And then it's going to go with all of these wines that have a bite, that have a little bit of earth. Bump it up with some richness with the cheese, or cut these down and use the little florets on top of your crostini with your goat cheese. Wow. Think about this. Like vegetarian, leave off the cheese and just do the pesto if you want to go vegan. You are good to go. So Speaking though of March Madness and Women's History Month, we wanted to throw this together for Share and Pair Sundays because Jackson Family Wines, which owns La Crema, they own Matanzas Creek. You know, of course, they own the famous Kendall Jackson that taught us all what Chardonnay is as a grape, and still makes everything in a barrel. They really do. And still is the #1 selling wine brand in the country. It's for a reason. Whenever I taste it blind against other Chardonnays, even though some of us in the master sommelier world want to be snobby, the truth is it always stands up and is a great, great wine, especially for the price. And we're all looking for great wines for the price. But this, the La Crema is a very cool brand in my opinion because Sauvignon Blanc is a category that's taken the world by storm. The consumer loves it, and they just put a great, delicious version in the bottle for the price. As you notice, these are screw tops, so they're just meant for crack it open wherever you're at. You don't need a special tool, and that's cool. And Jackson Family Wines is a supporter of lots of women's things. You saw in our first recording with Haley and Ben, over 60% of their winemakers are women, including at Stone Street, including at La Crema. So that's pretty darn cool. They mentioned 15% of as the industry average for women winemakers. We all know that women have great palates, and some people say that anthropologically that developed because as the hunter-gatherers looking for wholesome food for the offspring, you had to be pretty good at smelling and tasting and noticing when things were good to go or no go, right? So, so I think that's a cool thing. They've taken that to the next level with a sponsorship of the WNBA. So I thought I would just show you a little bit about that as we wrap up the discussion about Share and Pair Sundays, which they have sponsored in a big way as part of Karen McNeil, Kimberly Charles, and Colangelo PR's campaign. I asked them to support this episode for that reason because I felt like we need to get Share and Pair Sundays. Let's have some ideas for what we can share and pair. And it's spring and it's March Madness and it's Women's History Month, so check out what they had to say. This is a cool one. Super excited to be able to do this celebration of Share and Pair Sundays and wrapping up Women's History Month, March. La Crema is a sponsor of the WNBA.
Yep, so March is a big time of year. You know, we start to watch the March Madness action going on.
Yep.
We're anxiously waiting to see, you know,
Yeah.
how everyone does
Check
throughout
my
the
bracket.
championship. We don't have a college partnership.
Yeah.
You know, it is with the WNBA.
Yes.
But a lot of those very talented ladies are going to be moving on
Exactly.
into the draft and hopefully being drafted in April.
Yeah.
When that starts.
Very,
so,
very
yeah.
exciting.
And it's true. Pro basketball is known as the wine league.
Mhm.
But also, it's, you know, it's like we said, come home, enjoy a basketball game,
Yeah.
Sauvignon Blanc, wait till Sunday, till it's time to share with friends. and
Exactly.
do it
Oh
together.
no, every day. Share and Pair
Yeah.
Sundays it's just that's the practice round. Every day can be an occasion. Tuesday's good.
Yeah.
Especially
Exactly.
if you connect with people that you care about.
You know, we're really excited to support the.
So, how about that? I'm sure you're enjoying basketball as much as I am, and even if you're not a basketball fan, I'm sure excited for these college kids and for this big step, especially for NCAA women's basketball this year being part of the TV earnings. Because at the end of the day, if the schools get more money for it from the NCAA's TV broadcast rights, that means that they can do more for scholarships and do more to advance the sports and the opportunities that that represents, which is so, so cool. I had a question from Chris Spencer. What's my opinion of the low alcohol Kendall Jackson Chardonnay? Chris, have not had it, but I have the Sauvignon Blanc. Let me just show you. Where is it? Ooh, yeah. Sorry, I had to walk out of the frame, but I left La Crema the other day with a bottle of this low calorie, 85 calories per serving, and 9% alcohol. Really good, really good. So that is incredible. I will say, Chris, I have not found very many alcohol-free wines, completely all alcohol removed, that are good. I haven't found any reds that are good. I have found some that were palatable, maybe. And I found a few whites. There was a Spanish Albarino. I wish I could remember what it was. The Mio Neto alcohol removed Prosecco style. You can't call it Prosecco because it's not Prosecco anymore. And then this one, this Dr. Lowe by Dr. Lawson, a Riesling with bubbles. So it's a sparkler as well. I think the sparkling and the whites with that great acidity are really the ticket when it comes to alcohol removed and reduced alcohol, which is also, they've removed some of the alcohol content. But the more you take out flavor as well. But I have to say, this was, I'm not about to pour out the Stone Street. It's really sad to pour out any of those, but I would recommend that you try this. And based on, it smells like Sauvignon Blanc, it tastes like Sauvignon Blanc, and 9%, most wine in this lineup here is gonna be 13 and a half, something like that. This gets you down towards Riesling Cabernet from Germany without sugar. Now, I do want to say something about sugar. It is not the enemy, right? When you've got residual or leftover sugar from fermentation of a great Riesling from Germany, it's not added. It's the grape sugar, right? And if you're going to eat a fresh fruit, you're going to have the sugar of that fruit. So it's not some sort of manufactured sugar or processed sugar. It is the natural grape sugar, which either has to be alcohol or it has to be sweetness in the wine. Be that as it may. So this is delicious. Oh gosh, I mean, what a gift is that? So that, to your point, when you want to drink a little bit lighter, it's a great way to go. And so I would recommend checking it out. And just based on the Sauvignon Blanc, I think this Chardonnay is probably going to be pretty good. So I plan to check that out too. Whether it's alcohol or calories, we all want to watch what we're doing. So thank you for tuning in. Share and Pair Sundays should really be as often as you have the time thing. I won't say necessarily every day, but we always want to share time with people we love and care about, or people we want to connect with new. Your neighbors, your friends across the street, your carpool group. Not when you're carpooling, but when you're off time. All of those are times that are so important, especially today. We have more in common than we don't, and we really want to make sure that we are fortifying and reinforcing our human connections. We're social creatures. We need each other. We absolutely rely on each other, and we're good. Everyone has something to share and something to contribute. So, and they're doing it. I don't care what anybody says. So we talked about Women's History Month. Thank you, Karen McNeil, for making history with one of the greatest books ever written about wine, the Wine Bible, in its 3rd edition, I believe. Hardest working wine woman I know. She's a neighbor and a friend, and just somebody that I admire so much for the effort that she puts into reminding us how special wine and wine moments like this are. Go NCAA women. I hate that there has to be a loser. As a mom of 3 kids, I hate there has to be a loser, so I just want a great game. I'm very excited to see where the Huskies go because I spent so much time in the Northeast. But man, and then Texas, Christian, Horned Frogs, I don't know, but then UCLA, never been to the Final Four. That's awesome! And South Carolina, always a dynasty. And you know what? You do need 2 Carolinas, a North and a South, because they're both awesome. Sonoma County Sauvignon Blanc, your wine for spring, for asparagus, for vegetables. But, don't limit yourself. You have homework to do with the Muscat and the Vermentino and the Austrian Gruner Veltliner. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining me. I will see you soon. Take care of each other. Take care of yourself. And share and pair. And next episode will be an Earth Day tribute. We will be talking to Anna Britton from the Napa Green, which is our certification here in Napa Valley. One of the first, if not the first, to phase out glyphosate or Roundup, which I think you all know is something that we want to get out of our soil. And so I'm super excited to have her. That'll be April 16th. We will see you there. And in the meantime, happy March Madness, happy end of Women's History Month, and happy beginning of Earth Month. We're going to tell you there are 7 different pillars of sustainability. You can focus on 1 or 2 and change the world just with your wine habits. Well, you'll get it off to a really, really good start. So cheers to you guys. Take care, and we'll see you soon. And March Madness. Let's go.